Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Ray Mabus.
Secretary Panetta, Minister Barak, ladies and gentlemen. To Mrs. Schiff, it's unbelievably humbling to share this ceremony with you and with those you represent today. As time moves us further away from the Holocaust, remembering is our greatest responsibility. It's our responsibility to the survivors, to those who were lost, and to future generations. It is a very fitting tribute that this remembrance occurs 69 years to the day from the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Poorly armed, with few supplies, those brave souls fought for nearly a month against an overwhelming German force sent to annihilate them. Asked 25 years later what military lessons could be learned, a survivor of the uprising, Yitzhak Zuckerman, replied that such a lopsided fight, where the outcome was never truly in doubt, was not, quote, a subject for study in military school. However, Zuckerman added, if there is a school to study the human spirit, there it should be a major subject. As important as this day is, and as important as Yad Vashem or the Holocaust memorials around the world are, these memorials, these ceremonies, should not be the only time we remember. This searing time, this terrible chapter of our existence, the Holocaust, should be woven into the fabric of our collective memory. The Holocaust produced unimaginable loss of life, loss of liberty, loss of generations of culture and family. Unimaginable loss on an unimaginable scale. But what was not lost, what could not be extinguished, was and is a strong faith and the perseverance of the human spirit. And that we must also not forget.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Leon Panetta.
Thank you, Secretary Mabus, for your work in bringing this together. Minister Barak, distinguished guests, members of the DoD family, thank you all for taking the time to come together this day of remembrance. Remembrance of one of the most painful and horrific chapters in the history of the Jewish people, but more importantly, in the history of the world. Today, we pause to remember and honor 6 million souls who were murdered, not because of anything they had done, but because of who they were. They will always be in our memory. They will always be in our prayers. And they will always be in our hearts. We also honor those who have survived, who endured unimaginable pain and suffering. They saw their family, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, other family members, and friends taken from them. They bore witness to evil and to tragedy. But in their strength, we all find inspiration. Inspiration to fight against the intolerance and indifference that allowed all of this to happen. Today, we also celebrate the enduring strength of the Jewish people, who overcame this strategy and built a strong and vibrant Jewish state in Israel. They have flourished there. They have flourished here in America, and indeed across the world. And that, too, is an inspiration to all of us. In my faith, resurrection from the dead is fundamental to our hope and to our faith. In the Jewish faith, resurrection from tragedy is fundamental to their hope and to their faith. I just had the opportunity to meet with my friend Ehud Barak, and we are deeply honored that he was able to join us here today for this observance. Ehud, thank you for changing your schedule so that you could be here with us. We understand that you've got a tight schedule and that you'll have to depart a little early, but thank you for being here. Ehud's life has been a living tribute to the memory of the Holocaust and the memory of his two grandparents who were murdered at the Treblinka death camp. Ehud has helped build and strengthen the state of Israel, rising to be a highly decorated soldier, prime minister, and now Minister of Defense. Ehud, I am proud to be your partner. I am proud to be your friend. And I am proud to work with you in continuing to strengthen the U.S.-Israel defense relationship. It's an honor for me to be able to participate in this event with all of you. Today, the world comes together to mark Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. It was my privilege to have served in the U.S. House of Representatives when we passed a law recognizing the days surrounding Yom HaShoah as a national civic commemoration, a law that also established the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. I believed it was important then when I cast that vote, and it is important today to mark these days of remembrance, because through commemorations like this, large and small, within families, at home, we send a very strong message that we will never forget and that we will never allow this to happen again. That solemn responsibility is shared by us as human beings. We owe that to each other as human beings. It's shared by us as Americans, and it's shared by us as men and women of the Department of Defense, who could be asked when the time comes to act to make sure that never happens again. For the United States Armed Services, these events are not a distant memory. Our modern military was forged in the crucible of World War II. It was forged in the fight against Nazi tyranny. To defeat Hitler, we mobilized all of the strength that we could muster. And in that effort, we witnessed many of our finest hours as a military and indeed as a country. Today, we carry forward the proud legacy of the men and women of the United States Army who played a vital role in liberating the camps at Buchenwald, Dora Mittelbau, Flossenburg, Dachau, and Mauthausen. American forces not only brought freedom to the survivors of Nazi horrors, they also made sure that in the aftermath, the world would know what had happened. In the days after Allied forces captured the first concentration camps, General Eisenhower, General Patton, and General Bradley themselves inspected a camp and learned and saw the atrocities that had occurred. In Eisenhower's words, atrocities beyond the American mind to comprehend. Eisenhower ordered every American soldier in the area who was not on the front lines to tour the camps, to take the time to go to these camps so that they could see themselves what they were fighting against and why they were fighting. These soldiers became not only liberators, but witnesses. Witnesses to one of the greatest atrocities in history. The commitment of our forces to the survivors of Nazi atrocities did not end with liberation. In the aftermath of the war, we cared for the survivors. We helped reunite families. We provided physical nourishment. We provided spiritual nourishment as well. For example, upon learning that there was not a single complete edition of the Talmud in Germany, General Joseph McNarney, commander of the American zone at occupied Germany, undertook an effort to print the Talmud for survivors. And when American forces discovered enormous caches of looted cultural materials, they set about ensuring that these objects would be treated and protected with the greatest respect. Ultimately, thanks to these efforts, millions of objects and sacred texts were returned to their rightful heirs or held in trust by Jewish successor organizations. The leader of that effort, a U.S. Army captain named Seymour Pomeranz, was a hero whose actions embodied the professionalism and dedication of the uniform that he wore. The contributions of American service members like Captain Pomeranz make us all proud. And we remember them as we come together as a community today to mark Holocaust Remembrance Day. Though we will always know what good was done and that lives were saved, we must always remember that we were unable to save the 6 million Jews who perished under Hitler's cruel reign. That is a burden that all of us must carry, not just the generation of World War II, but every generation must carry that burden. It is one that we must turn into sheer determination, a sheer determination to ensure that that will never happen again. Today, we renew that commitment. That is what this day is truly all about. And we do so by coming together to bear witness, just as our service members did more than 65 years ago. In a moment, we will be privileged to hear from Charlene Schiff, who has dedicated her life to making sure that the lives of those who perished in the Holocaust are never forgotten. Charlene, it is an honor to be witnesses to your story. And it is our honor to affirm to you that we will never stop fighting in the memory of those who perished, fighting for a better future, fighting for a world safe from aggression, from tyranny, and from injustice. Out of the darkness that was the Holocaust has come the light of eternal hope that never again will we allow that to happen. I would now like to invite, if I can, Minister Barak and the service secretaries to join me and Charlene in lighting a memorial candle. These candles symbolize unity and hope in our shared commitment to honor the memory of all of those who perished in the Holocaust. If you would please come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Charlene Schiff.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Charlene Schiff, and I am a Holocaust survivor. Before I share with you a very short version of my survival, I must pay tribute to my late beloved husband, who was in the military, in the army, and he gave his life for our country. I lost him 4 years ago on August 15, 2008. He had 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and he became ill with Agent Orange. He suffered for many years, and today I'm standing here, paying tribute to his legacy and mine as well. Thank you for giving me the time to express my tribute to my beloved late husband. I was born in a small town in eastern Poland. I was 9 years old when the war started. Both my parents were civic leaders in our community. My father was a professor of philosophy at the University of Lvov. He spoke 9 languages, and he would have been such a fantastic addition to come to these United States. But it was not meant to be. He continued at the University of Lvov during the Soviet occupation. I had one sister, 5 years older than I. She was a musical prodigy. The Germans took over our town, Horochów, soon after the agreement between Hitler and Stalin was broken in the summer of 1941. Right away, the Germans rounded up about 300 Jewish leaders, my father among them. We never heard from my father again. They had a list obviously supplied by our neighbors and former friends with whom we lived for years in harmony and peace. Every day, the Germans issued new decrees demanding all our material possessions of value, such as gold, silver, paintings, Persian rugs. They burned all our synagogues, prayer books, and Torahs. A few days after they took my father away, a group of Germans burst into our house, into our home, looking for my father's private library. They carried out all the rare books, among them some priceless first editions. My father's library was known as one of the finest in the entire area. Local people must have told the Germans about it. Shortly afterwards, the ghetto was established. We were given an hour or so to get ready. We took along only what we could carry with us, and we had to leave all else behind. The ghetto was completely enclosed, barbed wire reinforcing high wooden fences. 2 gates were our only way to the outside world. The ghetto was guarded 24/7. A written permit was needed to enter or exit the ghetto. Everyone 14 years of age or older was ordered to slave labor. Those who worked received a very meager food ration. Children like me received no food at all. We were ordered to wear a yellow Star of David on the front and back of our clothing. We were assigned a space to live with 3 other families in one room. There were about 100 people in the house, and we all shared one very primitive bathroom and a very primitive kitchen. In the beginning, my mother and several other women organized a secret school for children too young to work. At least once a week, there were roundups, łapanka they call them in Polish. People were grabbed at any time, day or night. They were put in a covered truck and never heard from again. Much against my mother's wishes, I would sneak out of the ghetto when she and my sister were at work. A group of about 20 children got together and we built what we called euphemistically a tunnel that led to the outside. Now and then we were able to obtain some food and sneak back into the ghetto. To get caught, one paid with one's life. I remember one incident in particular. I bought 2 eggs for a gold and ruby ring, my mother's. I tried to get back to the ghetto through the camouflaged opening, but before I reached it, I was caught. The Ukrainian guard found the eggs, threw them on the sidewalk, and rubbed my face in them. He yelled at me never to leave the ghetto again. He was one of the rare kind-hearted guards. My bloody face healed, and I had my life. 2 days later, one of my friends was murdered, trying to bring back a half a loaf of bread. She was not quite 11 years old. In the spring of 1942, we were moved to a smaller ghetto as the population dwindled considerably. The ghetto was enclosed on 3 sides with high wooden fences and barbed wire. The 4th side had a natural barrier, a river, which separated our small town from a neighboring village. Rumors started flying that the ghetto would be liquidated in the summer. When I use the word liquidation, this is the way the Germans referred to the fact that they would liquidate, they would kill, they would murder all the Jews. Mother was able to secure hiding places on 2 farms. One farmer was willing to hide 1 person, the other 2 people. When it became clear that the Germans were getting ready to liquidate the ghetto, it was time to escape from the ghetto. One day I said goodbye to my terrific big sister. She was to go right from work to the place Mother secured for her. 2 days later, we hadn't heard anything from my sister, and that meant everything went well. Now it was time for Mother and me to escape. It was rather scary as I held tightly onto Mother's hand and we walked out into the stillness of the dark night. Soon we were in the river. Shots rang out. We ducked and hid in the bulrushes. We couldn't move. It was very quiet in between, and any sound would have given us away. We stayed in the river for several days. We saw fire and smoke. We heard babies crying and screams coming from the ghetto. Bullets were whizzing seemingly from every direction. I kept dozing off, standing up, and lost track of time. I couldn't crouch because I was short and the water reached up to my chin. Suddenly, I woke up, and Mother was nowhere in sight. I became numb with fear. I don't think I moved for the rest of that day. By then, it became all quiet. I knew I had to make my way to the farmer who promised to hide us. I knew where the farmer lived, as we used to buy dairy products from him before the war. And one of his daughters actually attended the same school and classes as I did. I crossed the river and walked most of that night and finally reached my destination. The farmer met me in the barn. He wouldn't even ask me to go into his house. He told me my mother wasn't there. He said I had to leave when it got dark. He changed his mind and he refused to hide us. He said if I didn't leave when it got dark, he would take me to the authorities, and that meant that my life would have been lost. Hanging from his dirty coveralls and looking strangely out of place was my father's gold pocket watch and chain. When night fell, I was told to leave. This was actually the beginning of my odyssey. I felt I let my mother down. She couldn't wake me when it was time to leave. She probably ran into the forests where she was waiting for me. That area of Poland abounds with forests, so that's where I started searching for her. I felt so utterly alone. I had to find my mother. I had to find forests that were near villages where I could get some food and return to the forest the same night for cover. Darkness was my only cover. The first month and a half, I met other stragglers from neighboring villages and towns. They all had similar stories to tell. They had also escaped from the ghettos when their ghettos were being liquidated. I had many close calls, but one incident is riveted in my mind as it involved others as well. There were 7 of us at the edge of a forest where we ran into each other. We tried to share helpful information about other survivors, where to get food. Then suddenly we were spotted by a group of children. There was a small monetary reward for reporting a Jew. This particular forest had sparse underbrush, so it wasn't good for hiding. It was harvest time. There were huge haystacks around, and we all hid in one haystack, all 7 of us. When the villagers came looking for us, it didn't take long for them to zero in on that one haystack. They came with pitchforks and made a game of it. They repeatedly stabbed the haystack, laughing and joking among themselves. By the time they tired of their play, I was the only one left alive. They lined up the bodies in a neat row, removing their clothing and shoes. Obviously, they thought they got us all. And so my odyssey continued. I was on the run from forest to forest in search of my mother. During 3 horrible winters and 2 years in the forests, I was all alone, except for the encounters the first month and a half. My life in the forests was very difficult. Indescribable hunger forced me to eat insects, worms, and the like. Animals in the forests never harmed me. They warmed me with their bodies. Dogs in the villages were my real enemies, always eager to announce my presence by barking loudly, and in some instances by biting ferociously. I had many narrow escapes, but against all odds I did survive. I cheated death, which was always one step behind me. My mother, father, sister, and about 60 relatives all perished. This is just a small part, a microcosm of the Holocaust. To realize its magnitude, consider the fact that of approximately 5,000 Jews in my small Polish town of Chorochów, there were only 2 survivors, and one of them stands before you now, bearing witness and remembering. Sadly, my friend, the other survivor, passed away April 29, 2002. As a survivor, I know I must bear witness. This is a mandate, my mission and duty to the millions whose voice was silenced before their time. Now my plea to you, dear friends, together we must continue to fight what I call the 4 evil eyes. The evils of indifference, injustice, intolerance, and ignorance. Our great country, the United States, offers us many freedoms. Don't take them for granted. Use them wisely and try to reach your highest potential. Your opportunities here are limitless. Our nation is like a tapestry of many colors, different cultures together, all privileged to enjoy the same freedoms. You, our young people, you are our future and our hope. In your generation, we look forward for that tapestry to blend in perfectly like a beautiful, colorful mosaic, in harmony and peace, free of hatred, bigotry, and prejudice. My ardent wish, may your generation in our great country serve as an example and beacon for the entire world. I never found any of my family. I was told my father was taken to the concentration camp Dachau. Later, I found out differently. Apparently, the 300 leaders were led outside my town and shot after digging their own mass grave. To this day, I don't know which story is the right one, but it doesn't make any difference. It seems that I became a complete orphan at the age of 11. Someone denounced my sister, and after parading her naked, she was murdered. No one knows anything about my mother. I have nothing tangible to mourn, and there is no end to my grief. This is just, again, a microcosm of the Holocaust. And to realize the magnitude of it all, consider the fact that of some 5,000 Jews, as I said before, there were only 2 survivors. Sadly, my other survivor, my friend, passed away April 29, 2002, and I think I just said that before. And now, a few words about the museum and what it means to me. The museum I'm referring to is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, where I volunteer since its beginning, but I actually started speaking since 1985. This museum, I am just in awe of this institution. It is a memorial to the millions who perished, a moral voice, an institution of higher learning. It stands as a powerful witness of genocide born of racial hatred. When the last survivor is no longer here, this institution will be a constant reminder and a warning to those who tamper with human rights. It is a place of remembrance, reflection, and renewal. To me, it is a sacred place. I'm especially moved when I go to the 4th floor, where on the glass wall of the walkway, my little town of Horochov is engraved among the many other lost Jewish communities. It is one tangible connection to my past. In conclusion, I would like to read a poem I wrote in 1985 when I became a Yom HaShoah Bat Mitzvah in Alexandria, Virginia. The title of my poem, I Remember. I remember blowing bubbles in the air, rainbow colors all so fair, nightingales and jasmine's scent, all that love and beauty meant. I remember rainbow colors, no more, guards with rifles by the door, Star of David on my coat. I can't swim, I can't float. I remember a haystack in a farmer's field, used by 7 as a shield. Then only one is left, filled with sorrow and bereft. I remember the bottom of a water well. Did someone see me? Will they tell? Am slipping, clinging to the rounded wall. Dear God, don't let me fall. I remember being hungry, snow and frost, cold, alone, and very lost. Why go on with such a life, stalked by terror's cutting knife? I remember my heart by now, an empty shell. From all that pain, from all that hell. It's such a long and awful war. My wounds forever an open sore. I remember Papa's hug, Mama's kiss, darling sister I'll always miss. Their loving, sweet, and gentle faces gaze at me from empty spaces. They're gone forever. All is vanished, and my soul to torment banished. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me out. I'm honored to be here because I am a military widow. My beloved husband was called to God on August 15, 2008. As I said before, he gave his life for our country, and I know he's with me and he's hearing me now. And this is his legacy as well as mine forever, to remember, to honor the ones who were murdered and to bring new freedom and new life to every human being. Every human being is entitled to live a free life, and I will do that to my dying day, to try to bring peace to this world and to learn to live and to give the right to every human being. Thank you so much for being such a beautiful audience.